Hello! So, first of all, I want to apologize because I have not filmed a video in months because, as you may know if you watched my last video, I was pregnant and on the 31st of December I had a baby boy and I had a lot of complications with my pregnancy, so I didn't film any videos because I had an insane schedule with doctor's appointments and I just honestly didn't have time. So today I'm going to tell you about my labor and delivery because I know before I delivered I liked watching these videos on YouTube. It kind of gave you a idea of what to expect. I know everybody's labor and delivery is completely different and no two stories are alike, but this is my experience, and if it helps you at all, I hope that it does. If not, it's my experience, and it will be nice someday to look back at this video and remember everything. First of all, I want to say I might have some things out of order. My memory is not great from labor and delivery. I don't know why, but I've kind of forgotten a lot of things. It's only been 3 weeks tomorrow, but for some reason during my hospital stay, I just had a really hard time remembering things. So I'm going to do my best to remember everything. But through my pregnancy, I had gestational diabetes. I, towards the end, had some episodes where I had really low blood sugar, which was really strange. And I also had high blood pressure. And I also have, this is not pregnancy related, but I have a skin condition called Lichen Sclerosus, which is super rare, and you can Google it and kind of find out some information about it. But basically, the skin down in that area is really thin and tears really easily. So that will kind of come into play with my labor and delivery. I'll kind of explain all of that later too. Okay, so the 31st was a Wednesday, so the 29th, Monday, I went to OB to labor and delivery to have a NST, which is a non-stress test for the baby. I was having those done twice a week, having an ultrasound done weekly, and that was because of the gestational diabetes. They just wanted to monitor the baby's heart rate and make sure everything was good with him. So at my appointment, I had been seeing stars for a couple days, and my blood pressure had been high at multiple appointments before that. So they were kind of monitoring that, and they called the doctor because the blood pressure was still high, and they decided that they wanted to induce me. And they scheduled me to come back in at 3 p.m. on Tuesday the 30th. So I went home, I talked to my husband. He hadn't gone with me to that appointment. My mom went with me, and we kind of started preparing for everything. I decided not to go to work the next day. So Tuesday we kind of got everything ready. My mom came over, we cleaned up my house a little bit, and Adam, my husband, worked a half a day, and then he came home and we got all of the bags packed. We went to Noodles and Company for lunch because I had heard that if you get an epidural, you can't eat afterwards. So I wanted to eat something before we went, just so that if that's the case, I'm not starving. So we went to the hospital and we brought all of our stuff in, and they brought us into like this waiting type room where I normally had my non-stress test done, which I thought was kind of weird that they didn't admit us right away since it was scheduled to be an induction. And the nurse came in and she explained that because of staffing, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to induce me right away because another girl had come in active labor. And I believe they actually had 2 people come in active labor, and they didn't want to start something if they didn't have enough staff to control all 3 people, which I completely understand. It sucked and I was really disappointed, but obviously I wanted everybody to be safe. So I did understand that. So we went over to ultrasound in the hospital because normally I would have had an ultrasound that day to monitor the size of the baby. So we were just going to do that and make sure everything was good there. And at that appointment we found out baby was measuring about 7 pounds. So he was still small, which is good because with gestational diabetes, the risk is that you're going to have a big baby. And he was measuring small, so they were happy about that. So we went back over to labor and delivery, and they had the on-call doctor come in, and she was going to check my cervix to see if I had dilated at all and what my effacement was at. This was probably the worst part of my whole entire labor and delivery story because of the lichen sclerosus. So she did her cervical check. It was extremely painful, and while she was doing it, I was convinced that something had torn. The doctor said, "You didn't tear, that's really rare, people don't tear from a cervical check." And yes, it is really rare for that to happen, but I was convinced that I felt it. So I asked my mom, because my mom and my husband were with me, and I asked her if she would check, which most people might find kind of awkward, but I didn't. So my mom lifted up the sheets and I was bleeding. So we asked the doctor to come back in, and she took a look at that area and she said, yes, you did tear. She felt terrible. She said in 30 years of her medical experience, that's never happened. And you could tell by her face that she felt awful. She did say that because I had already torn, I'm probably going to have stitches anyway, and everything would get fixed up. But let me tell you, this was incredibly painful. So I laid there for probably about a half an hour before I could even get up because it hurt so bad. And they called my doctor, and they kind of wanted to figure out what's the plan. With my blood pressure and everything, is it okay if they wait to induce me, or should they send me home? So the nurse came back in and she said, yes, your doctor does still believe that you need to be induced. It is medically necessary, and so we're going to admit you. So we went in to a different room, kind of got our bags unpacked, everything was set up. The nurses came in and kind of explained how everything was going to go. They said that they were going to give me a pill. I believe it was called, it starts with a C and I cannot remember now. I really didn't want to take this pill because I had heard really negative things when I was researching it on the internet the night before about how if the contractions get too strong, they can't stop it. And it's also not regulated by the FDA. It's not necessarily for induction. It's just something that they use for that process. So I really didn't want to do that. And my husband told the nurse that, and she came in and talked to me, and she kind of calmed me down about it. And I was like, okay, I can handle it. Well, we waited a while they figured out all of their staffing, and the nurse came back in and she said that she had talked to my doctor and they decided they were going to do Cervidil instead. And basically what that is, it's almost like a tiny little suppository with a string on it. They put it in your cervix, and then it's basically to start the effacement process. They kind of want to thin out your cervix to get the labor process started. So she came in and she checked me, and I believe at that point I was about 1 centimeter dilated, hardly at all, and they said 50 to 70% effaced. It kind of depended because the doctor had told me 70% and the nurse thought it was more like 50. So they put in the Cervidil, and this was, oh gosh, 9 p.m. on Tuesday night. And she basically said, once we put this in, you need to stay in bed for 12 hours if you can. You can get up to go to the bathroom if you have to, but you really need to stay in bed as much as possible because we don't want it to fall out. So I tried to sleep as much as I could. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping. I had a lot of back pain. And throughout the night, I got up quite a few times to go to the bathroom, and it felt like things were progressing. So in the morning, about 9 a.m., they removed the Cervidil from my cervix. They checked me again, and they said I was about, I think they said 90% effaced. Possibly. Honestly, I don't remember. But they said that they had taken it out. We're going to wait and kind of see what happens from here for a little while. And that's when the back labor was starting to become really intense. When the contractions would come, my back hurt so bad. I asked if I could walk around for a while, and they said I could. So my husband and I spent the morning basically making laps around the labor and delivery unit. just kind of trying to walk around, get used to things. And then as it got a little bit later, they called my doctor, and she came in and kind of talked to me about everything. She checked me, and things hadn't really changed a whole lot. So they said that they were going to do a balloon catheter, I believe. Basically what it is it's a catheter that they put in your cervix, and it kind of inflates like a balloon, and that's to get you to at least 4 centimeters. So when the doctor came to put that in, she attempted to insert it, and she was able to stretch me a little bit, and she was super surprised because I was actually at 4 centimeters. So the point of the catheter was to get me there, so they didn't actually put that in because it would have just fallen out. She also put in some sort of contraction monitor. I guess it goes in a pocket of fluid near the baby to measure how intense your contractions are, because I had been having consistent contractions since about 36 weeks, and I was now at 38 weeks and 2 days. At 36 weeks, I went in because I had the flu, and my contractions were actually like 2 to 3 minutes apart, but they weren't painful. So I had already been having contractions. They just wanted to measure the intensity of them. So they put that in, and then the doctor told me, you know, if you're in a ton of pain, get the epidural whenever you want to. I didn't want to get the epidural right away, which is super strange because I'm a complete baby when it comes to pain. I never planned to do anything naturally. I didn't want to be in pain. So, excuse me, I told her that I did not want to get the epidural immediately, just because once you get it, you can't get out of bed after that. So I didn't want to be stuck in my bed, because the walking around was actually helping me a little bit. And so they gave me, through my IV, they gave me some IV fluids, and then they also gave me fentanyl for pain. And I did not even know that this was an option. They said it wouldn't hurt the baby, and they kind of compared it to the feeling of heroin, which I have absolutely no experience with, but it definitely helped. It didn't help for a long period of time, but it definitely made me really, really groggy. So we walked around as long as I possibly could, and then I asked if I could take a bath, because every room at the hospital that I went to has a bathtub, and it's your own bathroom, it's your own room. It's almost like a hospital or a hotel room, so you can treat it however you want. And they said that I could take a bath, and I said after the bath I want to do the epidural. So my mom helped me basically get in the bathtub. We tried to breathe through the contractions. They were definitely getting more intense, and then I asked after that to have the epidural. So the anesthesiologist came for the epidural, and my husband sat in front of me on the bed. I was a little bit nervous about it because I've heard negative things and positive things about the epidural, but I definitely knew that I didn't want to be in pain anymore. So honestly, at that point, it didn't really matter to me if it hurt. It couldn't be as bad as the back labor I was feeling. But let me tell you, I was actually wrong. I did not have a great experience with the epidural. Basically, I sat on the side of the bed. They had me hunch over, and the anesthesiologist was trying to find a spot in between your spine where they could insert the needle to get the best spot for pain for you. And he said, you know, if you feel anything down your legs, definitely let me know, but try not to move as much as possible. Well, twice I felt shooting down my leg, which was really uncomfortable. It wasn't so much painful, but it was definitely uncomfortable. And that basically, he explained that means that that spot, he kind of hit the bone. Now, the anesthesiologist, the nurse told me he is great, and if there was anyone doing it, that he's the guy that I would want to have do it. So I wasn't really nervous about that. But he did say that because I'm so short, my discs are really close together, so it's hard to find a spot to put in the epidural. Finally, they were able to get it in a good spot. It took a lot longer than I thought. And I'll have to ask my husband how long it actually took, but honestly, it felt like an hour, probably. And so once they turned the epidural on, my legs started to kind of feel numb, but I could still feel them. Honestly, I probably could have still walked, but I could not get much relief in the vaginal area. It really didn't do anything for that. So they said, you know, we'll turn the epidural up, we'll have you lay down on your side, and they put this big like balloon ball in between my legs and try to go to sleep and rest for a little while. So I laid down on my left side, and when I woke up, it was completely numb. My legs were completely numb, like I could hardly move them. And they said, you know, we need to try and get you on your back and see if we can get you some relief, because the contractions were, they were better for a while, but it was still really painful. So they gave me another dose of fentanyl. They came in, they tried turning up the epidural, and still it didn't do anything for the vaginal area. Now at this time, the contractions were definitely getting more intense. The back pain was getting a lot worse. And I was starting to panic a little bit, because now at this point I'm like, okay, now the epidural is not going to work and I have nothing to do for pain, and I am not the person that wants to do this all natural. So they talked to the anesthesiologist, and basically he said, at this point, we're not turning the epidural up any further than that. And if it's not working for you, we're going to have to try something else. So he said there was something that they could do through my IV that would give me pain relief at least for a couple of hours. And he went to, I don't know, discuss it or get it, whatever it was, and that he would be back. Well, in this time, my doctor came in to check me. And she checked me and said I was about 4 to 5 centimeters dilated, and she broke my water, which was an incredibly strange feeling, especially being tied down to a bed now because of the epidural. It kind of felt like I was laying in my own pee. But she broke my water, and they put in, at some point they put in a catheter. I don't really remember when. I know that it was really painful and it wasn't fun at all. But they did have a catheter in there. And then after my water broke, she said, all right, we're probably going to start Pitocin and kind of see where we go from here to see, you know, if the contractions can get, I mean, they were painful, but if they get stronger so that they actually make cervical change so that I can start pushing. She said it's probably going to be a long process, but it is what it is. So as we were waiting for the anesthesiologist to come back with the pain medication, I felt like I had a lot of pressure down in that area, and it was becoming more and more and more painful. So they ended up giving me, I believe, another dose of fentanyl, and the nurse checked me and they said that I was like 9.5 centimeters dilated in 1 hour. So I went from 4 to 5 to almost 10 in an hour. So the doctor came back, she kind of stretched it out a little bit. They said we're going to do some practice pushing with the nurses. And I didn't really prepare for labor very well, because I did not realize that the doctor doesn't stay for the entire time that you're pushing. Honestly, the nurses basically do almost everything for you. So I had a new nurse come in. It was shift change, and she was really nice. She said, you know, we're going to do some practice pushing, then we're going to do some real pushing. The anesthesiologist showed back up, and it was definitely too late to do anything more for pain. So we were just going to go with it. So we started doing the practice pushing, and then I started pushing for real. I had my mom and my husband in the delivery room. My mom held one leg, my husband held one leg, and my mom counted to 10. So basically every contraction they want you to push for 10 seconds 3 times. So at this point I could feel a little bit more relief from the epidural, but it was still really painful, and I had a ton of pressure down there, and my back pain was outrageous. So we started pushing. I was on my back, and the nurse suggested maybe trying some other positions. Now, because I didn't prepare for this at all, I didn't read anything about labor, I didn't even know there were other positions you could push in. So they brought in a bar that they put at the end of the bed, and they had a sheet tied to it. So every time you had a contraction, you would pull on the sheet to kind of get you in that hunched over position, which I guess helps push the baby out. And I still had my husband and my mom holding my legs and counting at the same time. So we tried that for a while. Honestly, that position really wasn't working for me. I don't think. I mean, it didn't feel any different. And then the nurse suggested I might have some more relief from being on all fours, which I really didn't know that this was even a possibility, but I was willing to try anything at that point. So they lifted my bed up and I basically turned around on all fours. I kind of had my arms on the top of the bed, and when the contractions came, I would kind of, almost like you're doing squats, you had to like arch your back and push through the contractions just like if you were laying on your back. So we did this for maybe an hour. I don't know, my time is really off, so I could be wrong. But at that point I was like, I am exhausted. I need to turn around and lay on my back. So at this point we turned around. I pushed again while I was on my back for a while, and then the nurse said, okay, I think it's time to call the doctor. And to me, this is like, okay, baby's about to come out. Where is the doctor? Why is the doctor not here? I just didn't know that the doctor was not going to be there the whole time. Just being unprepared. And that's fine. The nurses were great. So the doctor came in and she got all situated down there. And she told me to continue pushing, which I did for a while. And I could tell, I couldn't read my husband's face a lot, but I could tell by my mom's face that things were happening. They were talking about being able to see his hair, and that was exciting but terrifying at the same time. And I was really actually kind of surprised with myself on how well I handled pain, because I'm not always the most appropriate person. I thought that I would be screaming at people and swearing. I had a couple moments. They kept trying to put a washcloth on my head, and I really did not want it. I guess my mom and my husband told me that I threw it across the room, and I was so hot. I guess they put a fan near me, but oh man, the temperature in there, it was so warm. So I kind of like ripped off my hospital gown, which is funny to me because I'm kind of a modest person. I don't normally like to expose myself like that, but at that point I really did not care. So I continued pushing with the doctor, and at some point, I really don't know how it happened, I just could not stop pushing. I had lost my counting, I had lost my breathing technique, I was just constant pushing, and that's when I felt him come out. And from that point on, it was really a complete blur. I don't really know the order of how things happened. The only thing I know is that they did try to put him on my chest, and his umbilical cord was too short to reach to me. So they couldn't do that, and my husband had cut the cord. I know that they weighed him. He was 6 pounds, 9 ounces, and 19 inches long. And then at some point he ended up on my chest. I do have a little bit of footage. Second time?
Yeah.
So you'd rather have the lower dose?
I don't know.
Brittany, you did it.
She had 2
That's right.
and then no, she had 100 each time.
Got much bug in you.
Then 100, I guess, is fine. Okay.
Got much bug in them.
Little dude.
But I do have some. So I'll insert that, and then I just remember holding him on my chest and really not being able to believe that he was actually here. I was really in a ton of pain at this point. The doctor was stitching me. I did have a 2nd-degree tear, which honestly I thought it was going to be worse because of my whole skin condition, but it wasn't. So she was stitching me up. She actually had to wait a little bit, and they gave me more fentanyl because I was in so much pain down there. And so she stitched me up, we got him weighed, we got him cleaned off, and I was holding him on my chest for a while. And then they said, you know, we're going to give you some time before anybody comes in. So I know that I spent some time holding him, talking to my husband. My mom left the room, she gave us some alone time, and then I wanted to take a bath because I just felt so uncomfortable. And so my husband took care of him, and then I know that there were a lot of people waiting in the waiting room that wanted to come in and see him. So I told the nurse, I was like, you can let everybody in, I don't care, just send my mom in the bathroom because I need her help. So my mom came in and she helped me get out of the bathtub. She helped me get dressed in a really beautiful floral hospital gown. And then when I came out, a lot of my family was there. I know that, so my mom and my stepdad and my dad and my stepmom and my brother, I believe that was everybody that was in the room at the time, and obviously my husband. So they were all holding baby, and we basically talked about my delivery a little bit, and then at that point everybody kind of left. And at this hospital, the baby stays in the room with you, which is great. So we got him swaddled and put in the bed and all of that stuff. And it was now New Year's. It was now the 1st. And I was just so out of it that basically I just wanted to go to bed. So that's basically everything that I can remember from my labor and delivery story. I'm sure that I'm forgetting details and things may be a little bit out of order, but that's pretty much how it went for me. He was born jaundice. He actually, his jaundice levels came back pretty high risk. So on the 2nd, which was Friday, they actually brought in an incubator, and he had to spend the day in the incubator, which was heartbreaking for me, but truthfully, he loved it. I think just because it's warm in there, he really enjoyed being in there. And then they said when we went home that he was going to need to be wrapped in a billy blanket for a couple days. And basically what that is just a blanket that wraps around his stomach and gets plugged into the wall, and it's lighted. And it's just to help him get some of his color back. And so we did that, which was seriously a pain in the ass. And I hope that no one ever has to do that, because the cord on the billy blanket is ridiculous and does not fit around any clothing, and it's really hard to swaddle a baby with. And he also has to be plugged into the wall. But we did it, and we brought him back to the hospital, and they said that the jaundice levels had went down and we didn't have to do it anymore, and we could enjoy life as a normal couple with a new baby. So that's basically everything. We named him Ryker, R-Y-K-E-R, and his middle name is Charles, after my uncle who passed away last year, the day after Thanksgiving. And he was, I think I already said, 6 pounds, 9 ounces, 19 inches long. At his 2-week checkup, he was 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 19.5 inches long. And he's healthy and beautiful, and we are completely in love with him. And he is sleeping next to me. He's been asleep for almost 3 hours, so he's going to have to eat soon. I'm surprised he made it this long. But I'm on maternity leave for 5 more weeks, and I'm going to try and do some more videos. If there's anything in particular that you want to see, leave me a comment and let me know. I was thinking about doing a what's in my diaper bag video for newborns, because I think those videos are really fun right now. And then, of course, any beauty videos, if you want to see any of those, let me know and I can try and do that too. But I'm just going to give you a glance of him while he's sleeping, and maybe I'll insert a picture or two so you can see what he looks like. But if you have any questions for me, definitely leave a comment. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you soon. Oh, looks like he's starting to wake up. There he is. That's my little man. His name is Ryker. He likes to sleep with his arms up, and he likes to twitch and make lots of bird noises. So that is him. Alright.